which is a fascinating area, which is riparian buffers, right? So the forest strips that are adjacent to, riparian zones, the riparian forest, that's her area of interest and PhD work. And that's Deepti Narsimaya, who's logged in as well. Rohit's also come in, and he's been asking, like Sneha said yesterday, he's the guy who asks all the difficult questions. So warm welcome, Rohit, right? And Malhar and Giri are trembling in their shoes to know that you're here right now. Okay, right. Thank you. Should we wait a minute more, Sneha, or are we ready to go?
I think maybe we can wait for a couple of minutes and see if more people are joining in.
Excellent.
A meeting is open anyway, so people can keep joining, but we can maybe wait for 2-3 more
Yes.
minutes and then.
Yes, Anuja, I completely endorse what you said. Thank you, Rohit. I tend to make fun of people, but seriously, your questions are very thought-provoking and wonderful. Thank you.
We actually have quite a few recurring participants who have attended our talks every day, which
Yes,
is really nice. I see
yes.
Karthik Gokhale attends every day and
Oh, yes,
yeah,
yes,
also
and yes.
asks nice questions.
And Saili's been watching it on on
Yeah,
on the channel, and today she's live as well.
yeah.
Okay, right.
Deepthi has also joined
Yes,
since the last 4 days. So.
yes. Thank you, Deepti. Your comments are very welcome. Thank you. Okay, and just to sort of move to the next slide and present some basic rules for all participants, not for the host really, is please do, you will find your microphones are muted, your videos are disabled, but this is just to sort of remind you, if you wish to ask questions, use the chat box. We will be taking questions at the end of um, probably a little more dynamically. So we will take some questions at the end, maybe a question in between as well, right? Um, and it's perhaps we can start right now. Sneha,
Yeah. I think we
Arti is entering the wait. She's in the waiting room, so you could admit her, and then we can start with the recording immediately after that.
yeah. I
Right?
have started the recording just now.
Okay, excellent, and a very warm welcome to everyone. And this is the fifth day, and really looking forward to three lovely people speaking on very interesting subjects, fascinating subjects, certainly for me, and I'm sure for most of you. Right? A quick introduction to Giridhar Malla, Giri, as I have sort of started calling him. Um, is part of the marine program at the Wildlife Conservation Society, member of the Fishing Cats Conservation Alliance, um, been working in the Koringa area for a number of years, and has done a lot of work with children and with the communities there, trying to sensitize them to the status of the species and the possibilities of protection, including the communities in the whole process. So, Giri, the one thing that strikes me is that it probably is a pretty difficult species to study. And you probably have had to have a lot of patience, a lot of working with communities and so on, really waiting to hear from you more about it. So over to you, Giri. And if you wish to share, I'm going to stop my screen sharing here and you can start yours.
Sure.
Right.
Thank you, Gopa, and thank you, everyone. And good evening to everyone. And it's my privilege. Firstly, I have to thank for the organizers to give me this wonderful opportunity to speak about my research and conservation work. And now I'm sharing my screen. Hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. So yes, as Gopa told that fishing cats are highly secretive and one of the most threatened species in the world. And to study the cat itself is you have to have patience, like what Gopa was telling about. And so then I started looking at the fishing cats, and since I was raised up most of these coastal habitats, and I have every time a special interest in this cat. Since childhood, I have heard of like fishing cats are very close to your area and to my hometown, like not very far, like 3 hours from your hometown. And still nothing has been studied, like not much interest has been, not many people have been studied on the fishing cats. So then my interest started on looking at this elusive species. So if you look at fishing cat, these are discontinuously distributed throughout South Asia and Southeast Asia. And so they are mostly present in India around the East Coast, Sundarbans, and not much in the West Coast. And then in the Terai Arc in Nepal and in other parts of India. And recently it has been recorded in Pakistan and the Indus Delta. And in the Southeast Asia, we have them in a very discontinuously patched in Cambodia, Vietnam, and some other parts of Myanmar, other places. So for my research, I've been exclusively studying the Godavari River fishing cats. So Godavari River is the second longest river, and it's also called as the Dakshin Ganga because of its immerse, and so many livelihoods have been dependent on that. So this is my area of focus. And the Godavari River starts in the Nasik in the Western Ghats and transfers like 1400 kilometers and enters into Andhra Pradesh at the place called as Papikonda National Park, which is one of the picturesque landscapes in the entire Andhra Pradesh. So it narrows down there, and then it enters into a very big big floodplains, and then it and it splits into two, and that splits into seven tributaries, which are also called as the seven sages of our Hindu mythology. So till date, like people go to all these seven places and they do worship in order to like worship those seven sages. So at this particular place, we have an extensive patch of mangroves. So, and then there's a protected area called Koringa Wildlife Sanctuary where I've been exclusively working on. So this is the place where the Godavari mangroves, where it joins the sea. And these are some of the pictures here. So yeah, and looking at fishing cat itself is a very tricky thing. So initially I started like interviewing the people and then taking a boat and just searching for them throughout the night every day. And then people tell me that like mostly in the full moon time you can see the cat. That's the only time when you can see them. That is the perspective of the people. Then I started looking at the full moons and other phases of the moon, but I couldn't get any success. Then the cats are everywhere. I can see them like pooping on the trees everywhere, even in the temples, which this local fishing community manage them. They don't spare those places. They just go there and just poop it out. So, but this is one of my favorite picture and one of my first sightings of the fishing cat. And I feel extremely lucky that of my first sighting of the fishing cat, I saw that it's like crossing the creeks in the mangroves. And this is one of my first photograph of the fishing cat. So then I started the project called Godavari Fishing Cat Project to look at more into the detailed ecology of the cat. So like tigers and other marked cats, so fishing cats also can be individually identified based on their stripe patterns. And mostly we can identify at the forelimbs and the flank regions of the neck. So then we went on like taking boats, taking all the camera, and it's not an easy job. You have to take boat and you have to get down into the mud. And then sometimes I have to drive the boat because my boatman gets tired. And then also sometimes we have to swim to the particular place where we have to deploy the camera trap. So sometimes even the camera traps used to be submerged with the high tide type table. So we have to be very quick in these landscapes. And then we started, I started using the camera traps, and we have a population estimation. And all the hard work paid off with getting these beautiful images, camera trap images of fishing cat. And these are some of the stunning images, and I feel particularly proud to get these images of the fishing cat in these mangroves. So these are all the cats. These are all the camera trap images. And no one has ever seen them before with the camera trap images. And then exclusively for studying the detailed ecology, I looked into a particular creek called Koringa Creek, one of the distributary of the Gautami Godavari River inside the Koringa Wildlife Sanctuary. And then I started looking at the movement patterns of 8 individual fishing cats. So this is all based on my camera trap images, and we saw them like they move and they use, and they're very closely moving to each other. So all these cats are like, I know all these cats, and my daily work goes like looking at all these cats, what they behave, how do they behave, and what do they eat, and which lunar cycle they come more, and what are the important species they prey upon. So then this is one of the first images of fishing cat with a cub in the Koringa Wildlife Sanctuary, and also in the wild. I mean, across its range. So seeing a fishing cat itself is a rare thing, and just getting a camera trap image with the cub itself is a very precious thing for us. So looking at the threats, fishing cats generally prey on the fishes, and it entirely depends on the fishes for its as its prey. And also the community also depends entirely on the fishes in the mangroves. So that's where the biggest conflict happens between both these human wildlife conflict. So both of them, I mean, work so hard to get that fish and to sell the fish for the communities. And if you look at this net here, this is an intertidal net which is placed across, like you see, several hectares of land. They just use it on a new moon and a full moon day. And this is the time where the fishing cats also become more active, and they just go and scoop out the fish which is caught in the net. So that makes the fishing community to become agitated, and that's where the retaliating killing happens, and that's where it happens. And the fishing community uses this fish mostly for a delicacy called as smoke fish, which is very famous in the Godavari districts. So it is exported to other parts of the state. So for that reason, they just spend so much of the hard work in the mangroves. And when this fishing cat goes and scoops away, takes away the fish, so it becomes, the fishing community becomes very aggressive for that, and they have that negative attitude toward the fishing cat. So we are also trying to sensitize these issues and finding out like measures like how to deal with this issue. And here you can see a fishing cat went and just tore the entire net which was kept with the fisherman there. So if you look at the Godavari River is one of the heavily dammed river in the country, in India. And there are around 921 major and minor dams across its basin. So every inch of the Godavari has been dammed for a number of reasons, and for hydroelectric projects and agriculture, dams, anecots, and a lot of things. So every water has been utilized for different states across its course. So if you look at this time series data from 1984 to 2000, you can see that like how the river is like sending the discharge to the downstream, and how you can see that downstream is hydromorphology is entirely changing because of the river and this healthiness of the river. And also you can see like how the sea level is increasing, and you can see like how the mangroves have been getting decreased day by day with this incoming sea level. And also you can see aquaculture expansion since like 1984 to 2000. This is one of the biggest threats for the landscape, aquaculture. And Andhra Pradesh is the highest leader of aquaculture and shrimp industry. And most of the shrimps will be exported to Southeast Asia and across like different parts of the country. So this is also a livelihood option for the people, and they depend entirely on the aquaculture, and they just do anything for to get that surplus from the shrimp cultures. So if you look at the images at the seaward side, you can see like a lot of mangrove patches have been lost for the incoming sea level, and then you can see a lot of sand gets ingressions into the mangrove, and once the sand gets accumulated in the mangroves and there's no turn for the mangroves, they will eventually die. And also there's aquaculture. It's a rampant of aquaculture industry in Godavari districts, and which is like the biggest threat for the fishing cat. And I have seen like if one year I see that if I say that there's a pristine mangrove patch, and the next year if I go, it will be turned out into an aquaculture, and more and more people are like coming into this industry, and the government itself is like promoting aquaculture industry to sustain the people in these locations. And also another threat is like over exploitation of the resources, and entirely blocking the channels from where the migratory fishes come to the creeks. So this is another reason why there's like which is also biggest threat for the fishing cat, because it declines the prey species and the dependence on the fish for the fishing cat. And also exploitation of the firewood and for their like fishing nets and other timber. They use mangroves for a lot of reasons for their livelihood. And also the another biggest threat for the fishing cats here is like water pollution. And across the Godavari River in the upstream, I'm talking about the downstream now, but if you look at the upstream, there are a number of industries set up in the upstream. which eventually release all the discharge into the Coringa Wildlife Sanctuary and the other mangrove patches in the district. So at some times the effluents become so much that you can hear, I don't know if it's visible, you can see like so many fishes get, they just surface in the water and eventually die without getting the toxin. So this is one of the biggest threat also in this region. So then looking at all these issues and threats, and I thought like we have to work more with the communities and how to sensitize them. Then I initiated a project called Children for Fishing Cat, where I will be interacting with the children, school kids, and going to the schools and teaching about the fishing cat and showing them the materials and all the fishing cat images which I got in the camera traps and asking them to name individual cats. That's what my work was mostly with the initiative. And children got very attracted to this and they just name the cat which they saw in the picture. And whenever I go to the village and they tell me that how is my cat, what the cat is doing in the mangrove forest. So that way we brought a kind of sensitizations to the kids, and now they became more attracted to the fishing cats than before. And then we also conduct like drawing competitions where they become more excited and they just draw their own unique cats. Like here you can see an albinism cat here. And also I developed a game. We developed a games like board games where people can, I mean, children generally play the game and they learn that what fish here if you see the game, this is the game which we designed. And you can see like when the cat walks in the creek, what kind of fish it takes and what kind of habitat and what lunar phases it does, it gets the fish and all. So this board game also made the kids to learn more about the fishing cat and they just really liked it. And then I also designed few comic books for sensitizing the kids, and this book is available in Amazon. And also we distributed few books and other comic books where the kids can learn more about the cat. Yeah, thank you. That is all my initiative in the Godavari Delta, and hope you all liked it. Thank you.
And this is not just interesting; it is actually fascinating, completely fascinating. And you know, the 2-3 things that strike me right away, and I'm sure it strikes everybody who's listening into the call. Yeah, Vedika says she loves the idea of a board game, and I completely second that. I mean, the fact that, you know, you're combining science on one side, Giri,
Yes.
with the creative side of you. You're trying to, you know, you're using art, you're using stories, lovely work. Saili completely endorses what you're doing. Wonderful work, huh? Giri, wonderful work. And I love the fact that you've chosen to actually move with the community.
Yes.
I think there's a very high level of appreciation for your presentation, as Rohit is saying, and the quality of work that you're doing. Thank you. That's quite remarkable, remarkable stuff. Right?
Thank you.
And
Thank you very much.
if people actually want to help you, maybe with ideas, maybe with on programs of working with children, etc., in the chat box, you could put in your email ID if they would like to get in touch with you.
Sure.
Particularly if they want to help you with any program that reaches out to people with creative material and so on and so forth. So you could put in your email ID over there, right?
Sure, I can do that.
And the final comment there were lots of praise for your presentation. The final comment is about the fact that you're showing a lot of compassion for the community as well. I mean, this has to be where you work with the community is what I really understand what you're saying.
Yeah, without the communities, it's extremely difficult to, work in these landscapes, particularly with that a huge industry of aquaculture.
Right. Thank you, Giri. And one final thing which I quite missed telling you in the course of introducing Giri is he's also doing his PhD at the moment with the Wildlife Institute of India. So thank you, Giri. And I'm going to sort of move on to the next presenter. And may I ask Madhushri to please, yes, there you are,
yeah.
Right? Giri, if you can not share your screen or you can stop share, that would be nice. So
Sure,
just to introduce Madhushri to everyone, she is doing her PhD at ATRI, that's the Ashoka Trust for Research in Ecology and Environment. Very interested in working in particular on a frog which is called the Giridhar dancing frog. Did I get that right, Madhushri? The pronunciation? Yeah. And working on that as part of the Zoological Society of London. She's done a field guide to the frogs of Manipal. And I guess in that sense, that's similar to what Giri is doing as well, probably reaching out with some sort of citizen awareness program and community program, right? With that short introduction, just to tell you that Madhushri will be presenting on Myristica swarms, prehistoric forests, as it shows over there. I'm going to hand it over to you and get into a stock video mode for myself as well. Thank you. Over to you, Madhushri.
Yeah, thank you. So my talk for today is on the Myristica swarms, and as you can see, it is also very popularly called as the prehistoric forests. And in my talk today, I'm going to first start with a little short story of how I was introduced to Myristica swarm forests, and then I'm just going to talk about the ecology and the structure of Myristica swarm forests, and also a little bit of history and the significance of these forests, and then just finish it off with a number of animals that you see in the forest. Okay, so let's begin with a wonderful video from the swarm forest, so you have an idea of what we are actually talking about. So this is like the forest floor of the Myristica swarm forest, and that's how the canopy is usually 25 meters to 30 meters. Like the trees are very similar to any evergreen low elevation forest. So not so long time ago.
Madhushri, sorry to interrupt. Before you move any further, there are some black boxes on the screen that we are seeing. I was wondering if it is the internet issues. Could you stop and restart again?
Yeah.
Reshare again?
Yeah, I'm just doing it in a minute.
I can still see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry to break the flow.
Oh, no problem.
Sorry.
Yeah. Had you noticed? Yeah. Is it better?
No, I still see the black boxes, and I asked Anuja also, I think.
Yeah, it's right on the top right now. It's better than last time, but I think you can continue. Should be okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe there is somebody else sharing the screen, or is that the reason?
It's not possible. We've allowed only one participant to share a screen.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe you can switch off your video and try running. Maybe it will save the bandwidth.
Yeah. Is it any better?
Not really.
No, it's the same as before.
No problem. Continue.
Okay, it's at the top, so it should be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, just let me know. Otherwise, I'll just stop the whole thing and like redo it again.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Please continue.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. So, like I was saying, not very long time ago, my team and I were surveying an area near Unchali Falls, which is a very popular tourist site. Of course, everybody knows about it. So we were surveying around the Unchali Falls, and like any field work, it's never complete without simple food. So we had like amazing food, and there were like these charming little roadside hotels where we went to, where handwritten bills are given, something that you don't see in Bangalore at all. And then we ventured in a small hamlet around the town, where there were obviously kacha roads, and this hamlet had a community living there, which followed some certain sort of religious practices, and they also had a sacred grove nearby. So there was a temple for worship, of course, and this is a newly built temple. So the earlier temple is not there anymore, but apparently the deities remain. But the priest of this particular temple introduced us to one of the Myristica swarm forests from Uttar Kannada. And when we ventured in the forest, this is how it went. Like the forest floor was, of course, with a lot of roots that you see. These are inverted U shaped roots that we are going to talk about today in the presentation. But the forest patch where we entered was a well demarcated area, which nobody was allowed to enter except the community members. And I was told that nobody actually ventures in the forest because of the fact that it's a very sacred place for people. And when we were entering in the forest, at that time, the community member who was with us removed his footwear outside of the boundary of the forest and then started walking inside. And three of us researchers, my team and I, we were having so much difficulty to actually walk inside the forest. But then he was happily without his footwear entering in. And we asked him the reason for, why did you remove your footwears before? And he said that the place is so sacred to us that as respect, we do not even wear our footwear inside the forest. And as we ventured in, we looked at these, these freshwater streams that flow through the forest. And then we saw little filters, that were there at each of the stream. And these filters connected with pipes to the households of the people who were living in the community. So basically, this is an area where the community was getting its potable fresh water supply throughout the year. So I'm going to show you another video. And in the background, if you heard the sound, you can see the flowing streams. And of course, you can hear the call of the dancing frog, which also I'm going to talk at the end of the video. So these are the streams that flow through the swamp forest. And I think this is one of the reasons why it is called as Myristica swamp, because it's a patch of wetland that is there. So a swamp is described as something, as a wetland that is dominated by woody trees, which you already saw. And a Myristica swamp in particular is a freshwater swamp that has exclusive, evergreen flood resistant trees. And most of these trees belong to the family Myristicaceae. So Myristicaceae is a very popular family because of the fact that it has a very famous member in the family, the nutmeg, or in Marathi, we call it Zaifar. And Zaifar has so many medicinal properties that it's a really popular spice across the world. And I think because of this popular spice, the whole entire family is also sometimes called as the nutmeg family. So these forest types, these special Myristica swamp forest types, were not recognized as special types of habitat before the 1960s. In fact, before the British invasion in India, these forests and the land rights of these forests were particularly with the community, and the community managed it. In fact, even cutting down the forest for timber was considered a taboo, and so the forests were never logged really for big trees. But with British invasion and with the Second World War during the 1940s, there was large-scale tree felling that took place. And of course, the Myristica swamp forests were also part of it. And then there's the constant struggle of land rights that we see even today with community members and the state-owned forest that is ongoing. So in 1940s around, there have been a lot of large-scale tree felling that took place, and most of the timber from these trees was used for making ship and other war material that was required during the Second World War. So the swamp forest suffered a lot before its recognition as the special type of habitat and before it was actually included in the books. Some of the most common trees that you find in the Myristica swamp, the demarcated area, the Myristica swamp forest, are of course Myristica fatua and the Gymnocranthera, which have suffered quite extensively. And another good thing about these trees are that they were considered as archaic tree species, and they are also some of the primitive flowering trees and flowering plants that we are aware of. And the origin of these trees, the Myristicaceae, in fact, actually shows us that the origin of the family was before the breakup of the Gondwana land. So there's enough evidence to support that for this moment. So these forests are basically, possessions of evolutionary history. And that's true even with not just with the trees, but with the animals as well. So right now in the Western Ghats of India, we see the forests in the state of Kerala, Goa, Karnataka, and Maharashtra I think in Karnataka alone, there are around 51 known swarms. I don't know if there have been newly added swarms, but in some literature, it shows that there are around 51 swarms that have been recorded from Karnataka alone. The structure and special adaptations that, these trees, which are really fascinating for most biologists, is the overall structure of the forest. So the sacred grove is actually known by different names in regional language, and in Karnataka, I think it's called the Kan forest or the dark forest. So Katle Kan actually translates to dark forest. And of course, one of the reasons for the fact that these are called as dark forests could be the fact that the canopy cover is really, really high. It's about 80 to 90% of canopy cover. So there's hardly any light that actually reaches the floor. And some of the other adaptations are, of course, the what we call as pneumatophores, or the root system of that particular tree, or the trees that are found in the swamp. So pneumatophores are also called as breathing roots, and that's because these inverted U-shaped structures that you can see are actually parts of the main root system, but they sort of protrude outside from the surface and into the air, and these sort of help to combat the anaerobic conditions that are there on the swamp. So the roots have like small pores that help the plant breathe. And there are, of course, these tilt roots that you can see over here. These are oblique roots that are coming out of the main stem, and they grow obliquely, and they, of course, provide anchorage, as you can see. So the thing is that a lot of the soil of the Myristica swamp forest is loose soil, and of course, it has a lot of moisture. So to provide additional anchorage, the stilt roots are visible. And in one of the trees, which is very popular, the Myristica fatua tree, the roots almost resemble buttresses. So when the tree grows older and older, the adventitious root actually turn into flat roots, and they resemble buttresses, which we are aware of. There are also, of course, trees with rhizomes. So rhizomes are, you cannot see them, they are underground, and they're thick stems that are buried in the soil. So when you think of rhizome, think of ginger. And another very interesting fact about these forests is the regeneration property of the forest. So these are primary and climax forest types. So that means that the regeneration property of the forest is really, really high, and the forest is often in a stable equilibrium position. Equilibrium state. So since the title of my talk, we've been, calling Myristica swamp forests as prehistoric forests or something. Other popular name is that these are, relic forests of India, or they're just ancient forests that we are aware of. But often we use the word relic in, in the context of a museum, that, oh, there's a museum of railway relics or something like that. But in this case, why this particular forest is called relic is because it, of course, I already spoke about the evolutionary history that the forest has, but the fact that it doesn't have a major history of like large scale clearances where the original vegetation has been cleared off completely. But in these relic forests, there has been some, original vegetation that sort of persists. And that's also because of the fact that they were considered sacred. So largely, they have been spared from felling, and they have also been spared from slash and burn agriculture in general. So even today, some of the sacred grove remain in the position that they were, and a lot of original vegetation still persists. So I think that is one of the major reasons why it was also called as a relic forest. And like I already said, in different regional languages, you have different names for the sacred groves, like Devrai in Marathi or in Maharashtra is very popular, and Kan in Karnataka. Katle Kan is one of the sites where you find the Myristica swamp, which is very, very popular among biologists in India. And of course, with photographers and filmmakers too. Like I said, that these forest types are actually primary forests. So They are, of course, very rich in biodiversity. The biodiversity that is actually there is also endemic to that particular place. And these, of course, tropical, low elevation forests with high canopy and big trees, a typical evergreen forest. When you think of an evergreen forest, you would think of these kind of tree structure, right? And of course, like I already said, it has a very complex ecology. It sort of also helps in maintaining the watershed and providing water to the existing watershed and to the rivers that originate from the Western Ghats. So, and the other thing about these forests is also that they are climax forests. So climax forest is often usually confirmed with the regeneration status of that particular forest. So a satisfactory regeneration is called a climax forest, where the mortality is almost compensated by regeneration. So whenever there is damage done to a larger tree, there will be smaller saplings that will take the place of the larger tree, in the most simplest way possible. So to explain, I mean, yeah. And like I already said, that these forest patches have sort of been spared from slash and burn agriculture. However, that's not true today. We see a lot of threats to Myristica swamps, but I'm just talking about in the earlier times, they have been spared. So that is the reason why they also got this, the normal that they are relic forests, so they're ancient forests. So, and they had cultural significance. Like I said, there always was a temple around, or some form of, worship or socio-cultural significance to the forest. And I mentioned earlier as well, timber extraction or cutting large-scale trees was a taboo. So a lot of large-scale trees have been spared. Of course, the swamp has a lot of relic trees, or trees that were really primitive or ancient, and they're of course endangered and vulnerable as well. And Semicarpus is one of the newest member to the Myristica swamp forest trees. So quickly wrapping up, I think I might have 5 or 10 more minutes. The significance, or the uses of the Myristica swamp forest. And like I said, I already told you in the story, and I think we've stressed enough on the fact that they provide potable water, and even in the dry season. And when we were actually entering in the community-owned sacred forest where we were studying, the community member described the swamp as a sponge, and he said that the sponge acts as to hold the water in place even in the dry season. So it's very important to us in the summers when it's sort of like a sponge. It keeps releasing water throughout the year. And he also, of course, told us about the socio-cultural and religious value of these groves. They are rich in biodiversity, like I said, and also rich in biodiversity with rare and endemic plants. They support a lot of arboreal species, especially monkeys. The lion-tailed macaque is one of the famous monkeys that you would find there. And they also support birds, a lot of birds, and amphibians, of course. In the literature, it has been documented that the swamp forests actually acted as barriers to wildfires, because of course they're full of water, so they acted as barriers. And they are also known as one of the sources of leaf litter in the country. You know that leaf litter sort of forms carbon sink with mixing with the soil, and it is a part of the biological carbon sequestration that takes place. So these are some of the main sources for leaf litter in our country particularly. And they also have a lot of medicinal significance. Like I said, right, nutmeg or zephyr that we use in our houses has a lot of significance. Like if there's a cranky child who's not sleeping at night, you grate the nutmeg and put it in milk and give it to him so the child would sleep. So it causes drowsiness, is what my grandparents have said, and my mother and my father believes that it causes some form of drowsiness and helps cure insomnia. Apart from that, the medicinal value of Myristica family trees are also things like hallucinogens. So there are a lot of known hallucinogens that are there. And there is also a cure, or I think a poisoning for delirium, which is like a state of extreme confusion. So there is some evidence that these fruits are consumed for those cases as well. They also act as seed banks. Like I said, the Myristicaceae family trees, there are a lot of seed dispersals that are available there, like the birds and the macaques and the mammals. So they also allow for seed dispersal and help forest restoration and regeneration, of course. And a lot of non-timber forest produce that like the edible fruits and honey and spices. One of the other popular spice from the Myristica swamp forest is pepper, which have been used extensively. Now, coming to the fun part of this is, why do I get to go to these Myristica swamp forests? And one of the reasons why I get to do, stay in these swamp forests and interact with so many community members and get to know their stories is because of this endangered little frog that I've been working on with the Zoological Society of London. And this frog that looks like a rock, of course, doesn't catch a lot of attention, but it's an endangered frog. And very recently we discovered live tadpoles of the frog in 2020. The frog was described just immediately after independence, and I think now we're discovering the live tadpoles of the frog. So it's a really neglected species, but a very popular one because it dances. And the other mammals that you of course see in the forests are, elephants. So I've heard a lot of stories from the community members about how elephants have been passing around their houses, going in the swamp forest, stepping on the demarcation that they have created and moving on with their lives. So mammals that are as big as 10 feet and have been seen in the swamp forest. And there are animals as small as the otters that are less than 3 feet, I believe, that you're going to learn about today in the session, have also been seen in the swamp forest. So it's a magical place with like big animals, small vertebrates from like another world. And of course, a possession of evolutionary biology, not only in terms of the tree species, but also in terms of the animals that are found there. Thank you.
That was lovely. That was really lovely and very engaging. I mean, I just didn't feel the time fly by. So thank you so much. Fascinating forests, right? And a couple of questions that come to mind are, if you look at the history of Myristica, certainly in the last few, let's say, last 100, 150 years, we may have seen a lot of damage post, let's say, post the British coming in. But you actually think that the cultural values and the sacred nature of the forest contributed heavily to their pristine conservation, right?
Yeah.
And in turn, that acted as an umbrella for the conservation of a whole host of species that lived within.
Yeah. Totally.
And therefore, my question to you would be, in the protection of Myristica going forward, does it mean that we have to engage with these communities, possibly with the temples, with the trusts that run these temples and so on, to ensure that these forests are protected for future generations?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think that it would be very difficult for, any of us to actually find the swamp in the first place. It has to be with the help of, some community member who's aware of it, and then sort of venturing through their land to the demarcated patch, right? So I don't think that it would be very simple for any of us researchers or outsiders to actually venture in and find the swamp. Yeah.
Right. Lovely. And one question that came on pretty early on from a person called Apurva was, is there any book or documentary where a person could explore Myristica and information about Myristica in further detail beyond this talk? So if you do...
There are books on taxonomy, right? One of the very popular books that was written at the time of British, of course, was on the Indian trees. That has a lot about the Myristicaceae family in general. But I think about the swamp forest, they have been a very recent addition. So they have been added to the books only in the 1960s. So, since then, I don't think that there are too many books that are available, but there are certainly a lot of papers that you could read. And they're lovely papers. Like, they're not, very scientific papers. You would have fun reading them. So,
lovely.
I think, yeah, papers would be a good idea to start with.
Nice, nice. And
Wikipedia page itself, you can find the papers. The link to the papers is just on the Wikipedia page. So I think that would be a good start. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you for that link and for that lead rather. And I'm just going to run through 2 more questions and then we'll move on. Aarti says, can we find Myristica swamp frogs wherever these forests are present? In other words, would there be a sort of 1-to-1 correlation between the forests and these the frog species? She's probably referring to the Giridhar dancing frog that you're talking about.
So from our surveys, what we know is that the Giridhar dancing frog is present at least in the Karnataka's swamp forest. But we have, for my study, we have restricted it to Karnataka. So I don't know if the same species are available in Goa and Maharashtra, but there are frogs that are restricted only to the southernmost Western Ghats, like the swamp forest of Kerala has some different species of amphibians. But I think that's just, a question of more exploration, because of course there are not that many research funds as well. So, depending on that, we have to sort of figure out how much knowledge we can gather.
Right, absolutely. And there are some really nice comments appreciating your presentation. So thank you very much for that. And Saili has made a comment which is actually the bridge between your talk. So first of all, thank you so much. And there is a bridge between your talk and Malhar's talk, because Malhar's works on otters, both species of otters found in these largely in South Indian landscape, which is smooth-coated otters and the short-clawed or the small-clawed otter. And as you rightly pointed out, he's seen them in Myristica swamps in his area, along with the other species you pointed out as well, which is the Indian elephant, the Asian elephant. So he's, I'm going to now pass the baton from you onto Malhar, right? And he's going to talk about these species. And what Saili really says is that maybe we should be exchanging notes. That is, she and Malhar have done some work on the Myristica swamps in their area, which is in South Maharashtra in the Sindhudurg district. And possibly they should be exchanging notes with you, Madhushri. So thank you very much. And I'm going to move on to Malhar with a quick introduction. Malhar is an old friend, in some ways a colleague. He's an independent researcher based in the Sindhudurg district of Maharashtra, working on small-clawed or the short-clawed otters and smooth-coated otters in 3 riparian landscapes, the Terekol River, the Tilari River, and the Ghataprabha River. And today he is going to be speaking for the next few minutes, primarily on small-clawed otters and their presence in paddies and in the Myristica swamps, particularly one that he has actually encountered, right? He has a bandwidth issue, so I'm actually going to be sharing the screen on his behalf. And I just need a minute to get that little bit sorted. So Malhar, you can sort of unmute, you can start, and I'll share the screen in about a minute.
Thank you, Gopa sir. Thanks a lot. Yes. So Madhushri, it was a great presentation by your side. Very interesting presentation. It is always fascinating and amazing to listen and hear about Myristica swamps. So we'll go to the slide before going to, another thing about Madhushri was saying about how she came across the Myristica swamps. I think it seems that me and Madhushri share the same story of landing up in the Myristica swamps. So one of my friend, Gayatri Giridhar, she was also looking for frogs. For another reason, she's studying fungus on frogs. That is the BD fungus, I think. And that's how we came across the only Myristica swamp in Maharashtra. So we share the same story, it seems.
You, Malhar, are you able to see the screen now?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay, please continue. Thank you.
So before going to the otters, I would like to tell a small story, a small phenomena that happens in the Myristica swamps. And that is the kind of a link between the Myristica swamps and my animal today. So when the Myristica swamps, the Myristica tree actually has these fruits, as Madhushri said, that which is called nutmeg, which we use in our kitchen in the masalas. So this fruit gets ripe up and It is fed upon by different animals, especially the hornbills, which are known to be the farmers of the rainforest. And when the myristica fruits get ripe up, if they are lucky, they fall down on the forest floor if they are not been hunted by the great hornbills or the hornbills. And when they are on this forest floor, when the fruits ripe up and they break or they bisect and the seed pops out from the outer cover, the seed gets popped up, and it has got a aerial kind of thing, which we also use exclusively in the masalas, which is called as the zaipatri. The seed is called as zaifa, and the aerial is called the zaipatri. And this is liked by the another creature called this. These are the crabs actually, and crabs actually love this aerial. And what they do is they take the whole seed along with the aerial and they take it below the ground floor in their burrows. And here there is a higher chance of these seeds getting germinated into saplings. So in a way, if we say that the great hornbills or the hornbills are the farmers of rainforest, so we can say appropriately that crabs are the farmers of myristica swamps exclusively. So they till the land, they sow the seeds below the ground surface, and the seed germinates. So crabs are the very essential part, I would say, of the myristica swamp. And along with this correlation, crabs also support this amazing animal about which we are going to talk today. So crabs are very abundantly found in the myristica swamps, for the fact that there are huge number of myristica fruits in the myristica swamp, and the crabs feed on them. And the small cloud otters, which is the part of today's talk, my talk. So these small cloud otters, they actually love these crabs as well. So I haven't seen small cloud otters itself in the myristica swamp, but I have sighted or spotted the sprints of otters inside the myristica swamps. So we'll move on to the species. You see the screen. Yeah, first screen. You see the screen, the first picture. This is of the otter. I think we are seeing the second slide. Yeah. The first picture, you can make out three things out of the first picture. First thing, how does the otter looks like? Second thing is, this picture was taken in by the camera trap in the night time. So essentially, the small cloud otter is the nocturnal species, and also one of the most elusive animal. I have been working with Nityata River Otter Conservancy and Sanctuary for last 3 years, and there are only 2 incidents when I have sighted a small cloud otters. And yeah, so it's a very elusive, very shy animal. Second thing we can see from this picture is that the otter is seen under the overhang of a huge boulder. So otters usually they love this kind of sites. They use this overhang or the crevices of the boulder to rest as a resting place, and also in a few instances they use these crevices between these boulders as a nursery to raise their pups as well. So this kind of boulders along with the swamp habitat are very important habitats for the otters. In the second picture, you can see the claw marks of the otters. So sighting a small cloud otter is very difficult, as I said. You get to see smooth coated otters very oftenly, like a dozen or two or three dozen of times I have seen the smooth coated otters in the field, but the small clouds it is really difficult to sight them. But you can make them out from the claw marks and the sprint, that is the scat. In the second picture, you can see the claw marks, and through claw marks you can make out the difference between the smooth coated otter and a small cloud otter. So even if you see the picture of a small cloud otter and a smooth coated one at the same time, it is quite difficult to make out the difference and which one is the smooth coated and which one is the small cloud actually. But from the claw marks, it is quite easy to make out the difference. Another thing that out of which you can make out the difference is the scat. So in the third image, you can see the scat or sprint of the small clawed otters. So small clawed, as I said, they love feeding on crabs. So you can see the crush of crabs in the sprint. Secondly, their diet is also supplemented by other invertebrates and small vertebrates as well. So they feed on fish. At times they will feed on snakes, on frogs as well. So their food range is quite wide, and this is the reason we say that the otters are essentially the top predator or the apex predator of the riverine ecosystem. In that way, they are also the indicator of the health of the river or the ecosystem, riverine ecosystems. We will move to the next slide. So this is the field area where I've been working in. This is the Tilari landscape. The landscape is also called as the Tilari Valley. The catchments of Tilari are known in Marathi, which is the Tilari Valley. And in the first picture, you can see this huge blue patch, which is of course the Tilari Dam. It's a major dam in Maharashtra. And in the western slopes of Western Ghats, there are two major Tilari projects. And the right map you can see a few clusters of blue patches actually. So these are the upper Tilari dams. So there are many dams that have come up in the last 2 or 3 decades. So you can understand that this is a very heavily modified landscape and a managed flow of water. It is also very complex and dynamic hydrology to understand. Many of the tributaries are dammed already, and the major tributaries dammed and converted into the Tilari hydroelectric project. As I said, small clawed otters, they feed on crabs because they get crabs abundantly in the habitat they live in. Their habitat is actually small streams in the hilly terrain, the high waters. So you can see that when there is a dam coming up or the dam has come up, it is not the habitat of the small clawed otter. So the habitat of otters here in Tilari area, it has got segmented and fragmented into small stretches. And so very few stretches that have remained in Tilari, where you can see population of small clawed otters. Another interesting thing in the field area, you can see in the maps that won't be visible, but there is a strong culture of sacred groves in this area. So sacred groves you can see throughout extensive landscape throughout India and throughout the world as well. But especially in Konkan, the culture is quite very strong. In a single village, you can see see 2 to 3 or even 4 sacred groves in a single village, and they are still there. They haven't been vanished, because in last 1 or 2 decades, many of the sacred groves have been vanished or the tree felling has been done for several reasons, especially for the temples that have come up, huge temples that have come up recently. So sacred groves is a very essential part of this landscape and has been very crucial in supporting the otter population, small clawed otter population, as well as other species, other taxa as well. Move to the next slide. So these are some kind of some sacred groves that we have seen in Tilari landscape. There are 3 ways how the sacred groves help the population or help creating the habitat of the otters or the small clawed otters. The first picture you can see a river pool. This is actually based in the Terekhol river, which is a parallel river running north to the Tilari river. This sacred pool is called Maulichi Kond, and people have associated this pool with the local dating. So people don't fish or do fishing in this pool. So it provides the best habitat for the otters. Otters, usually you go and see them, they will be feasting on fish always. So you see smooth coated otters prominently here. So sacred pools are the very essential part of for the providing as a micro habitat for the small clawed otters. This is one way how sacred groves help the habitat of small clawed otters. The second way how sacred groves have been crucial for small clawed otters is the second picture we see. This is actually the Myristica swamp, the only Myristica swamp that you see in Maharashtra, that is located in Sindhudurg district. And there are a few more swamps that resemble the habitat of the Myristica swamp, which doesn't have the Myristica species, but there are huge trees in the swamps. And as I said, the small clawed otters, they actually require very less water, less than a feet or 2 feet. So they can really live in very low waters. And this kind of habitats, they actually provide. They are actually the origin of many springs. So there are a few swamps around besides the Myristica swamp, which provides a great habitat to the small clawed otters. Another small story I would like to share here. There is a small tank which is considered sacred by the villagers in Tilari landscape, and this was actually earlier it was a laterite built tank, but later the villagers they concretized it, and this was the idea. And the idea came from the villagers that they will introduce the goldfish into the sacred pond, the tank. And one day they thought they will do it, and they introduced the goldfish. The second day they came, there was no goldfish there, and there were all scats or sprains of small clawed otters. So the small clawed otters, they came at the night, and they had eaten up all goldfish from the tank. So small clawed otters in general are known to raid from the fishing net as well, and from the aquacultures as well, as Giri said about the fishing cats. In the third picture, you can see a otter feeding on fish. This is also a smooth coated otter. Like as I said, I have only twice seen the small clawed otters, and I haven't got any picture of small clawed otter yet. So the third picture, that was also taken from the Maulichi pond, the first picture you see of the sacred pool, and many a times you will get to see the smooth coated otter. I would say 80% chances of sighting an otter there. The fourth picture you see of a Indian rock python. So this picture was taken from a place called Sat Bai. So Sat is 7 in Marathi or Hindi as well, and Bai is a Malwani word that they use for wells. So there are 7 pools that the pools look like wells actually. When you go there, you will see get to see snakes and different kind of life forms there. I had sighted a rock python and a this thing, the cat snake as well. So these 7 pools are considered sacred, and you will get to see these prints of small clawed otters all around. So sacred groves are the source of springs. It's the second way the sacred groves has been helping creating a micro habitat or a habitat to the otters or the small clawed otters. And third part is of course the sacred groves that are in the riparian patch, they provide good habitat to the otters as well as many different species, especially the owls. A few times we have seen that the otters have been using the crevasses or the root connection as a resting place as well as a nursing site for the pups to raise. So riparian forests are very necessary or very essential part of the small clawed otter or otter's habitat. So these are the 3 ways how sacred groves are essential habitats of otters. So this is one area where we have been intervening for conservation. So I can name at least two sacred groves where we have been working with the communities to sort of congratulating them that they have done a great work conserving this forest, and somehow this concept gets penetrated to the youth generation as well, and somehow this very important habitat gets conserved. You go to the next slide. Uh, the another area where we have been intervening is the for conservation efforts is the non-traditional or the unsustainable fishing. So in the first picture, you can see a bleach packet that is equivalent, I would say, to the half-liter of milk packet in size that we get in the market. So bleach or the bleach powder is frequently used by the communities or the villagers for fishing, and you can understand when this whole packet gets emptied in a very small stream, what havoc it must be causing in the whole stretch. So when this is done about a few kilometers of stretch downstream, all kind of life forms gets killed, and you can experience a mass fish killing the whole few kilometers of stretch downstream. In the second picture, you can see a coil of wire that is been, I think, extensively used for electric fishing. So the coil is adjoined to a stick, a wooden stick, which is connected with a wire through the farms adjacent to the rivers, and electric current is passed through this wire to the coil, which is immersed in a river pool or a stretch of river. And when this is done, a certain part of the radius of the pool gets affected, and the all life form, including the juvenile of the fish and other life forms as well, they get killed. The third picture, we can see it's a carcass actually of a small clawed otter. Uh, the photo was given to me by a forest guard. So there were two carcasses of the small clawed otter, and of course that time I was also new to the field, and this death of two small clawed otters, which are the schedule 1 part 1 species, the death of these otters went unreported. So I'm sure this must be happening quite often, that the small clawed otters die in the habitat among its distributional range, and mostly goes unreported. The possible reason of this could be bleach fishing or dynamite fishing, because this is the stretch where we have found bleach packets at most. The first survey which we had done in 2 kilometers of stretch along the river, we had found 1 dozen of bleach packets. So you can understand what must be happening to the river stretch, or what the stretch would have been going through. Uh, the fourth picture that we are seeing is of the carcass of the smooth coated otter uh, that we found in the Tilari River as well, and this we had reported. We had compelled the forest department to get a report done of this. The forest department, they came, they did a panchanama. By that time, the carcass was decomposed. Still, they did not thought it important to get this death reported. They asked me to take the carcass with my bike, and get it to the forest department office. So this is the current status of otters, how important they have been looked upon, or they are overlooked. Uh, this is the second area where we have been intervening. We'll go to the earlier slide, sir. This is the second area where we have been intervening. So there are few initiatives that we started in these stretches. One of which I would consider was very effective, was the fish plot conservation initiative. So this program, in this program, we had asked the farmers actually that they don't fish or they abandon fishing in their paddy fields during the monsoon season. So as we know, the fish they migrate in the paddy fields for spawning. So this is their spawning period, and by doing so, we ensure that the spawning happens good, and there is good reproduction chances of the fish. Uh, it is really difficult to quantify the effectiveness or the success of this program. But what we had done is we knew the community by that time, and we knew who are the people who are been engaged in non-traditional or in the unsustainable fishing. So we sort of included these families or these individuals in this fish plot conservation program. So I think it is a positive way through to ask communities to not do something like to stop doing non-traditional fishing. We also asked them, requested them that this is amazing stretch of a river. It needs to be conserved for the next generation. So you should report us if anyone is indulged in this kind of non-traditional fishing. So we had already knew that these individuals are themselves they have been doing this, but the second year that we had done the survey in the same stretches, in the same stretch of 2 kilometers, we had found only 2 bleaching packets. So I think this was a success that can be quantified to some extent. Uh, so while we have been able to gain some success in intervening in these conservation efforts, we will move to the next slide. So this is the third area where we have been intervening in with the communities. The chemical farming or the conventional farming that has been done. There are extensive farmlands as well in the landscape, and we thought it essential, important to get to involve ourselves in this in the chemical farming because we had located a Myristica swamp, and there was a huge patch that was running adjacent to the Myristica swamp of the paddy fields. So we thought if somehow we can take the farmers from chemical farming to the organic farming, it would help the Myristica habitat as well. So I think it is quite difficult to get the farmers from chemical or conventional farming to the organic farming. So we have been running a program on organic farming, which are workshops on how on the method of organic farming. So people to some extent have started using Jivamrit or pest control, organic pest control in their kitchen gardens. But because the farmers they're dependent totally on their field, so it is quite difficult for them to get through the chemical farming towards the organic farming. So I think it requires a long-term involvement with the farmer to do this, but there is some amount of success in organic farming as well. So people have been telling that the Jivamrut especially has been very effective in raising the productivity of their kitchen garden. At least I don't know how long it will take to get it from the kitchen garden to their conventional their commercial paddy fields, but we hope to do more in the coming years. So that's it from my side. I hope you all liked the presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Malhar. That was really interesting. I'm going through it again with you, but I mean, as in your work, but fascinating, right? And best wishes for everything that you're doing there. I want to take, Sneha, if I can request you to also unmute yourself. There are a couple of questions that have come in, but let me start with a question to Malhar right away. And that's a very briefly, the question from Karthik Gokhale is, what are the behavioral differences that are observed in ecology of smooth-coated and small-clawed otters, right? So if you were to look at behavioral differences, if you can just spend less than a minute and just give us, let's say, 2 or 3 bullet points, we can move on to, because there are 4 or 5 other questions as well, right? Just for example, diurnal versus nocturnal, over to you.
So I have hardly seen a small cloud otters, and the sightings, the 2 sightings I have talked about, they are very rare. I mean, it was just a glimpse of small cloud otter. So I can tell about smooth coated otters that they are seen, they are active in the daylight as well, since I have seen them. And second thing that I would say,
Diets, for example, diets are very different, isn't it?
yeah, diets are quite different. In the sprints, you can see in the smooth-coated otters, they inhabit the larger rivers and also the tidal backwaters as well. So if you look at the sprint or the scat of the otters, you can see the scales of fish especially. And I also observed or seen the exoskeleton of shrimps as well, where the otters they were sighted or they were reported from the tidal backwater areas stretches. Right. In small clouded otters, you major differences that you see skeletons of crabs in them.
Yes, thank you. And let's sort of move on to Sneha. If you can unmute yourself, Sneha, and take a couple of questions, that would be wonderful.
I think you mean Madhushri. You want me to
no,
ask?
I mean, yeah, if you could just coordinate a couple of those questions
Sure,
for me.
sure.
Yeah, thank you.
So once again, we have some really interesting questions from Rohit. Some of them are for Giridhar and some of them are for Madhushri. So I'll start with Giridhar because we started with him. Rohit asks, awareness and sensitivity definitely helps further tolerance between humans and wildlife community. But are there certain economic or policy mechanisms such as compensations or insurance that can help sustain this coexistence in the future? Also, can the aquaculture farms act as habitats, even if suboptimal for the fishing cat, or does the cat totally avoid it?
Thank you, Rohit, and that's really a very good question. So regarding the aqua farms forming as an habitat, yeah, the aqua ponds have been like they're in a massive scale. I mean, so to go from one pond to one pond, there'll be like it's extremely difficult even for the cat or even for the people. So mostly all the ponds are like shrimp, and that too shrimp ponds are extremely difficult to maintain because of the white spot syndrome. So if one pond gets the syndrome and if someone without knowing it, it just crosses from one pond to another pond, it will be a devastating thing for the entire ponds. So it's a huge loss for the communities and they would literally, lose crores of money for such a syndrome if it really happens. So that's the reason they entirely protect the ponds with electric fences at some places. And even I know like few people have also died because of these electric fences, not only the fishing cat. So that's such a rampant industry runs there. So I think for fishing cat, it wouldn't become a really a good habitat if we are talking about become an alternate livelihood. I mean, alternate habitats. So regarding the compensation and the insurance, I think, yeah, we also looked at policy measures with some of the people when we talked with the village heads and all. So, but because this is not like a one-time process, like fishing is like everyday thing. They have to go every day, then they have to keep nets every day, and they have to bring the surplus back. So, and like dealing with everyday thing is really a tricky thing to at presently at this with our project right now. And but in the future, we are also trying to look at some policies where we can assure. But either way, I think it will take a very long time to even achieve that.
Dealing with people are always tricky conservation questions,
Yeah.
isn't it? I mean, finding a balance is really the biggest challenge.
That is true. A quick follow-up question from Deepthi would be, are there any instances of poaching of fishing cat?
As such, there are no poaching incidents in my study area, but there are in other parts of India, there have been known records of poaching. not especially in my study area, but mostly people kill the fishing cat for retaliating. And also sometimes they kill it for, for eating. Actually, people also find it little delicacy. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Very, this is.
But as such, there's no poaching happening with fishing cat. But people really like fishing cat. That's what I eating.
That's actually eating. They like eating fishing cat.
Yeah, it's a sad part, but yeah, that's what many of the
Very
people
surprising. I had no idea that people eat fishing cat. There is one more question for you, which is on education, but we'll quickly take Madhushri's question before we take a question on conservation education. So Madhushri, Rohit asks you, is there scope to or usefulness in bringing certain Myristica swarms or habitats into protected areas fold as either conservation or community reserves, especially considering it's a watershed and carbon sequestration benefits?
Yeah, so certainly these forests are, at the mercy of the community, literally, and they are in a way community reserve forests, but not all of the swarms are recognized as community reserve forests. So so the Karnataka State Forest Department has to work with the community to actually assign these areas into the boundary of the reserve forests. There have been enough work, and I think the Karnataka State Forest Department is really interested into making the Myristica swamps into protected areas, but then it has to be with the community that there is some form of negotiation that is going on. Otherwise, it's going to be a little difficult to sort of have them as rigid protected areas, because that would also not help a lot of people. So so I think there has to be like a balance between the two, and both have to work together. And I think a lot of the species that you find in the Myristica swarms are actually species that are either endangered or threatened or vulnerable or whatever. So those are protected by the Wildlife Protection Act. So that anyways takes in the consideration of the State Forest Department, to actually sort of work with when there are projects, they have to work with the Forest Department to actually cut those species or not to cut those species, and how the decision making is done in that sense. So
yeah, and in this case, maybe like Rohit pointed out, that maybe community reserve or conservation reserve, which is governed by communities, would be much more suitable rather than having it as a rich protected area.
Yeah, correct.
Thanks, Madhushri.
Sneha, I'll just take a quick point. Karthik Gokhale has asked a question about whether otters are known to attack snakes as other members of the mustelid families do. I'll quickly answer it in one word, which is yes. Right? Smooth-coated otters are particularly known to attack snakes, right? Because especially when they have pups, which is happening as we speak. September, October is the birthing time for otters, and therefore this time they are particularly vulnerable to predation. Okay. Having said that, one point I forgot to mention about in Malhar's introduction is, and he sort of gently reminded me about it while speaking, is he's also a Sanctuary Mud in Boots fellow, and therefore Sanctuary really supports some of the work that Malhar does. I'm done. Sneha, over to you.
Yeah, I just we are venturing into conservation education, which is one of my favorite topics. So I thought I'll take it towards the end. Uttara has asked to Giridhar, how can you bring all these research simplified to make small children learn and understand? And can you recommend to education systems? So can you recommend, I'm assuming, can you recommend this curriculum to education systems is what she means, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, yeah. That is what our way forward is right now. And so we are trying to bring this curriculum to at least to the community kids who are really staying near to the mangrove patches. And we are also setting up libraries recently now to the communities. So at least we are trying to bring teachers to these libraries and engage them with these games, and also trying to include them in their curriculum if that really goes well. Yeah, we are also trying to look into that aspect.
That sounds really exciting. So a quick follow-up question from my end would be like, are you targeting a specific age group and are you targeting any specific school systems like government or private, or is it for everybody?
Is it for it's for everyone, but specifically we are targeting the fishing community kids because since we understand that that's where the major problem lies in. So I mean, our long-term thing is like we want to make them as ambassadors for fishing cat in this community. So they would take forward the conservation of fishing cat.
Right. And
Which Giri, which brings me to an interesting question that Saili has asked that I'm going to change a little bit. So have you come across instances where communities, where families have domesticated fishing cats thinking that they are not fishing cats, that they are domestic cats? Have you ever come across this situation? It's an interesting question. I never thought of it, Saili. Very creative question.
Yeah, I only have one instance of a villager who told me that he has trailed a fishing cat without knowing that it's a fishing cat. He just got a cub, but I don't know, I haven't seen the cat as such, but he haven't got any pictures. But he told me that I have raised a cat. It became big. It was becoming very big day by day, and then we realized that it's a fishing cat, and then they left it in the forest. That's the
Okay.
only incident I know. But otherwise, people really know. I mean, people can differentiate what is a cat.
Okay.
It's a
So,
very big cat.
right. So an interesting analogy would be that Saili says she's seen some news about this. An interesting analogy is that in Bangladesh, communities actually use otters for fishing, smooth-coated otters. They actually use them to catch fish, and there are videos that demonstrate that.
Yeah.
Yes. Over to you, Sneha. Any other question that's pending, or are we done?
we seem to have covered most of the questions. I think we don't have any more questions to go. Nor do we have. Okay, so there is one question on YouTube for Giridhar. How can one support the conservation of fishing cats?
Buy his book for starters.
Yeah, by the book and talking more about the fishing cats. And the best thing, what I can tell many people is that we have to be really responsible for what we eat. And especially when we are exporting certain things from one state to one state. Is it like really, I mean, we should look at like where the fish is coming. If some parts of from the aquaculture ponds, if you're getting a fish from one state, like Andhra Pradesh, if it's transporting to other state, so you have to look at like, is it sustainable and whether where we are getting the fish. In that way, if you are responsible in certain, at least in our own ways, I think we can minimize this uh, in a long term. That's what I can say of that. And also, we should teach our kids more. If kids are, if kids love the wildlife, I think they would take anything forward without our need. Yeah, that's what I think. And the communities are really helpful. I mean, once I started the work here, and they really appreciate our work, and they become very happy that okay, we love the fishing cats now, and they change their attitude so much. That's what we try to take it in a way forward. And they really,
Particularly because you're also pointing out that this animal is increasingly endangered,
yeah,
populations are dropping, and in some way the responsibility is on the community in some sense. Am I right?
yes, that's true.
Also, I will just quickly add one or two sentences. From my experience, what I have understood is a lot of times people, even though they know the animals, when you bring out interesting aspects of that animal that stays very close to them in their vicinity, for children at least it's fascinating, and that's how they get attached.
That's right.
Like just telling them how cool that animal is. Like
Yes.
fishing cat is so elusive, but when
Yeah.
you tell the kids that, oh, look at this animal, that's what gets them going, and I think that's what generates a kind of ownership. That's what my experience has been with children
That's
and
true.
conservation education. So I think that's one more additional tidbit for
Absolutely.
something.
Yeah, kids can change everything, even their parents' mindset. So I can relate an example where the kid actually he went to his home and he was like teaching his parents, and the parents later on they told that our kid became very fascinated with fishing cats and he would love to listen more about the cat. That's what I think, that change is very
Yes.
good positive thing. Which is happening.
And on that wonderfully positive note, Giri and Sneha, thank you. And Madhushri and Malhar, thank you very much. I think a fascinating discussion today. We overshot by a bit, but heck, I mean, everybody's been very interested, engaged. We've learned a lot. So thank you very much. I'm going to just sort of, hopefully I'll be able to share this. Sorry about that. I'm trying to get another screen in, and I'm not able to do that. Right. But basically, tomorrow we have the discussion coming up on frogs at 7:30 in the evening. We've got Guru Raja and Preeti, and we're going to have we're going to have a fascinating discussion, and I hope all of you will log in, and looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Right. With that, thank you very much. Have a great evening and see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everybody. Thank you so much, everybody, and Giridhar, Malhar, and Madhushri.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.